welcome to the F Squared podcast, a podcast of the Frontier FinTech newsletter. In this podcast, we discuss the business of FinTech with leaders from across Africa's FinTech ecosystem. Today, I'm joined by a good friend, Shamir Patel, who's been at the heart of I&M Bank's digital transformation for over, should I say, but for quite some time. He'll introduce himself to the show. And so I'm super excited. This is our inaugural edition. So, Shamir, thanks and welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Before we go further, would you mind just giving us an intro into who you are and what you do at I&M?
Yeah, thanks a lot, and it's great to be here. My name is, like you said, Shamir Patel, and I work with I&M Bank.
Yep.
I&M Bank is a tier one bank. What I would say it's a challenger bank.
Yep.
In today's day and age.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll obviously take you through the history
Yep.
of how we've transformed over time.
Yep.
But at the moment, I had the retail and SME business, and prior to that, I was in the strategy and transformation office.
Yeah.
I set that up, and part of a whole journey on the digital transformation started at that time.
Got it.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I really wanted you in today's show. The broader context is that I&M, in the market has been known for, at least used to be known for a long time ago as an Indian corporate bank. But now you've really transformed. And I think there was a report that came out last year by some guys called Data EQ that showed that, from a consumer sentiment perspective, and this is just like looking at digital and things like that, you were number one at like 72%, and the second bank had like 26.4%. So that's like quite a massive, gap. And, it's not easy like making that transition from like a very niche corporate bank into digital, like a digital leader. And not only that, anecdotally, when I speak to my friends, almost everyone is saying like I&M has the best app in the market. And so the core thing is that it seems like a large part of your change started happening around 2016, 2017. And in 2018, you had this thing called, I think, Imara strategy. And this is when you also launched something called iCube. And so for me, it seems like this is a period when the penny dropped for you guys, and it's like, now we need to take digital seriously. So you just walk us through like what was happening, why were these decisions being made at that specific point in time?
Yeah, thanks. Thank you. So yes, you're right. That's really the time we embarked on a journey, a revised strategy called Imara.
Mm-hmm.
We're currently in our third iteration of it.
Yep.
But just taking you back to that time, it was also a time of a lot of uncertainty for banks. And where I'm coming from, it was a time of the introduction of interest rate caps.
Got it.
So we went through quite a deep dive into, our core strengths. And like you said, we're very strong in the local corporate space.
Mm-hmm.
But the question was, is that a sustainable business model? And given at that time we were not tier one, a lot of efforts were undertaken to understand what it would take for us to be a universal retail and a corporate bank, so that you get the scale that you need over time.
Yeah.
So based on that, what was very clear is that there was a huge untapped market in the retail and SME. At the end of the day, we know in most of Africa, actually, SMEs, they contribute almost 70% of employment, as well as a big portion of the economic GDP. And you need to be playing in this space if you really want to scale as a bank. So what was the key areas we were looking at? We needed to basically expand on the digital front, create a different experience for the consumers in the market. With this, we needed to undertake a significant shift in terms of our transformation culturally. And that's where the idea of iCube came about. So we needed to bring in agile practices. We needed to bring in new tools. Banks generally have very legacy systems.
Yeah.
They're very monolithic in nature.
Yeah.
and it becomes very clunky and difficult to basically innovate with these systems. At the same time, we needed to bring in the talent, digital talent, and you and I know digital talent doesn't want to work in a bank, with people with suits, etc. Right?
Yeah.
So we did a lot of homework, went out there, looked at other businesses across the globe that have gone through similar changes, and took some learnings from them, and decided to adopt some of those learnings and develop this factory, what we call IQ, and bring in a different culture completely from the rest of I&M at that time.
Yeah.
And the whole idea was, can we start this, incubate this culture, and then eventually also bring it to the rest of the organization.
Got it.
And as you probably know, 70% of transformations fail globally.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of effort taken in terms of trying to drive that culture change right from the top, from the leadership, the tone, being part of it. So we used to have showcases for the talent. I mean, as they're developing, and the leadership would be there.
Yeah.
And spend time with them.
Yeah.
We also invested heavily in terms of at the board level. We brought in a digital advisor who actually advises Google in Asia.
Got it.
And he made a big difference in the sense he provided us a lot of insights on very small, minute things that you need to do on a day-to-day
Like
to
what?
really. The first thing we did, which he told me, why don't you have it might sound silly, but why don't you have a PlayStation? Where's the PlayStation? I was like, what do you mean PlayStation? He's like, you need to get a PlayStation.
Yeah.
Why don't you have cornflakes in the morning?
Yeah.
Like, okay.
That's got nothing to do with our business.
Yeah. But it's simple, small things like that.
Yeah.
But it just basically made that place a completely different from the rest of the bank, right?
Yeah.
And it brought in the talent.
And the energy.
That's needed. A lot of one of the important things we did there was also the kind of dashboards we had there and the transparency. So you walk in there as a leader, or anyone wants to walk in there, and you'll be able to see this is the sprint.
Yeah.
This is how the squad's performing. Each individual's performance, etc.
Yeah.
And it brought that whole energy, also that competitive spirit amongst the teams, right?
And these things are usually like, it sounds easy now that you're saying it in retrospect, but like it's super difficult, right? And the key thing is usually, the biggest thing is cultural.
Yeah.
Specifically, there are leaders who've built their entire careers based on, you call it I&M 1.0, right? And if the bank goes in this entire new direction, part of the thinking is like, where do I fit in this new direction, right? So from a career perspective, like, you need to protect your long-term relevance in this organization, but at the same time, you want to be seen to be supporting this new shift, right? And like, a few things need to matter. If you're to think back and think like, from a leadership perspective, what is the most critical thing that you got right that enabled this thing now to move? Was it like you had support all the way from the top, like, we're doing this, it's do or die? Was that a key thing?
It's always a difficult space. I think it's easier when you're not making money, and you really, it's do or die.
Yeah.
In our case, obviously, we were still a profitable bank.
Yeah.
So you had like, why do we need to change? We're profitable. Let's just carry on doing as is.
Yeah.
We all know you can't rest on your laurels.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, the bank and the board and the shareholders has ambition to really scale the business to a top 5 bank in Kenya and in the region. To do that, it was very clear that we all needed to move in this direction.
Yeah.
And what I must say is the leadership involvement in terms at the board level. We set up a separate cadence just with the board and to just follow through on that change in the culture. And as well as in terms of the investments we needed to make to deliver this, and that has been key. I can't overemphasize the different factories we went to and listening to their stories, I think that to me is key. And where to live, it's an influence model. You need to live it.
Yeah. You can't fake it.
You can't, be saying one thing and doing another thing.
Exactly.
It just doesn't work.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of effort on that space. I think culturally, it was a lot of time and energy went into that to ensure that we basically made that shift in change.
Yeah.
Driving agile principles. Again, in the past, consumer needs are quite dynamic and they keep changing. So in the past, we need this new feature, and then you do a change request, wait for 6 months. By the time they deliver it,
the market has shifted.
You shifted, and you're left behind.
Yeah.
So we wanted to bring control to within the organization. And that's why we went through this whole journey of trying to bring digital talent within and try and build that capability in an agile manner, bring that the principles of agile into the organization. And a lot of what we borrowed was what I think ING has done successfully.
Yeah. They've been a leader in the digital space.
Exactly. They've done a fantastic job, and so has DBS.
Yeah.
And we went through a lot of their case studies to understand what they did right, and obviously the lessons they've learned, and try to adopt as much as we can.
And I think it's an interesting case, because what's very clear is that from the ownership perspective, number one, you have to have kind of like a long-term owner-operator mindset. That you're actually doing this for the future, for the long term. But also, it needs a humility to say that, listen, we don't know. And we need to go to these guys and listen and, put our success on the side, because like in the market, you're saying you are a successful bank, but you have to put all that aside and say, like, I'm just going to be a sponge and understand what's happening in the market. And that's not as easy as it sounds from a cultural perspective. So that's a very interesting story. The next thing is, like, you clearly had to make quite a number of major vendor decisions. And, I've been a client of I&M for over 10 years. And I remember there was this thing called iClick, right? There was iClick, and there was a mobile app that was kind of like iClick mobile or something. iClick was a very, like, ugly platform, but, like, it worked, like, it did its job. Like, if you did a transaction, the transaction would go through. It was very feature rich. And then now, like, you've shifted now to different vendors, right? Like, just walk me through that kind of discussion, because you shifted to Backbase specifically, and, there's quite a bit of investment to now do all this. But you have a working app. Like, how was that conversation? Like, was there a conflict? Like, where do we have to do this? How was that conversation?
Yeah, that was obviously, we had to do a lot of research and work on the direction we wanted to take.
Yeah.
But the key decision we were trying to make is, how do we get control so that we're able to basically adopt the principles of agile, be able to deliver in sprints new features, and deliver them quickly to the customer. So you're right, we had a very clunky system with lots of features.
Yeah.
But if the UX UI side was horrible. Yeah, right. So we needed to find a way to get some control over this.
Yeah.
And when we looked around, Backbase came out top because it really gives you the control of it's open source. The other problem is the previous system was a proprietary language.
Yeah.
So you can't even get the talent for it. So this, the Backbase, the way it's set up, enables you to basically take control, in terms of your build going forward.
Yeah.
So that was a key determination for us to go in this direction. We obviously did our homework, looked at some of the other customers, and went through a similar journey. The other bit was, the previous system was a multi-channel approach, and it was not a omnichannel.
Got it.
So you had different experience based on the different interactions that you got.
Yeah.
While this is really an omnichannel.
Yeah.
So you get a seamless experience irrespective whether you're on the web or on the app.
Precisely.
And the whole idea is eventually you would push this to the branch, the branch side.
Yeah.
But really the main point was we wanted control. And with Backbase, we've been able to get that control, build, bring in customer focus groups, understand what the customer really wants, and quickly build based on that, so that we're able to deliver, the customer a service that really resonates with them.
Yeah. And the funny thing is that the element of control, as I listen to you, it clearly comes from the research you've done. Because what a number of people do is speak to these vendors and say, you just do this, get it done. For us, we don't want control. You kind of give the direction. Because I'm not going to take responsibility of some of the product features that come up. That's not my job. It's your job as a tech guys. So that's it's interesting to see that line from the research you're doing to the decision that now control is a key element of our digital strategy. And one thing that happens when you're doing this, and I'm sure it happened in your case, is, whenever you're coming up with these massive undertakings, there's always this idea of the unknown unknowns, right? and that's usually the hardest part, because you've convinced your board and your shareholders that this is what's going to take to get us from point A to point B. And then you realize, oh my God, there's this thing that now is very critical. And I suspect part of it was that when you shifted to Backbase, there's a time when the app was not working well, right?
True. Yeah.
In fact, I remember, as an I&M customer, I was like, this case just go back to iClick. It was working, right? But now I come here, I'm checking my balance, I'm trying to do a transaction, it's not working. And the little experience I have is, there are things such as middleware that you've probably not done well. The integrations with the core banking system is not really well thought out. So you not only have to upgrade your core banking system, you also have to upgrade the middleware, the API layer. And that's potentially an investment that the scale was not known when you were starting this project. Is that what happened?
So you're spot on. Obviously, when we moved to the new app that we were designing, first of all, we wanted to use agile principles. So first thing we did was look at the old app, look at the features. There were multiple features.
Yeah.
Many of them not even being used.
Yeah.
So obviously we picked what's the most relevant and started the journey with that. Lessons learned, I think the architecture design could have been done better at that time. So again, it's the whole issue of, you've got legacy systems, a middleware which couldn't cope with some of the demands.
Yeah.
So we needed to, relook at those layers, and if ideally we should have done that before this change. So that's really the area where we really struggled initially. So we had to quickly, pivot, try and fix that area. We invested in a new middleware, and then also built our own payment gateway to support our journey.
And the volumes and the flows.
And the volumes and the flows. Yeah. And even to date, what I'd say is we're there, but we're trying to be, 2 steps ahead in terms of volumes. And just to give you an idea, when we started the journey, we were doing about 100,000 transactions a month. We're now doing 4 million. So you can imagine.
That's 40 times.
Yeah. So
and there's no way you would have predicted such volumes, right? And were you building what the system you're building, was it for 1 million transactions, 5 million transactions? What kind of scoping had you done at the time?
Look, we wanted this, and we still believe this is the whole idea of our digital transformation and the app is really to make this your one-stop for everything, not just banking, but beyond banking.
Yeah.
So we want to create an app a lifestyle app. That's really our idea.
Yeah.
So obviously at the time we did plan for massive scale, but some of the systems were not really keeping up, and it's getting back to the problem of vendors, etc. They use waterfall approaches to delivery versus what we were trying to do.
Yeah.
So it's been a journey to try and get that up and running, but I think now, I think we're there yet, and now it's really about seeing how we can scale to make sure that our entire architecture can keep up with the kind of scale we're getting.
Got it.
Yeah.
So I think we'll take a fast break now.
Yeah.
That was good. That was good. Thinking about launching a spin-off digital bank, but don't want to spend years building from scratch? Meet Scalit, the end-to-end digital banking solution that helps you move fast and scale effortlessly. With Scalit, you get a cloud-native, API-fast solution that's modular, secure, and ready to evolve with you. No legacy constraints, no bottlenecks, just seamless innovation to power your growth. Whether you're a fintech expanding into banking, a marketplace embedding financial services, or a traditional bank launching a digital brand, Scalit gives you the flexibility to build, launch, and scale fast. Forget complexity, focus on your customers, and let Scalit handle the rest. Ready to launch? Visit scalit.com today. Thanks, Shamir. So we were talking about, the investments you guys did at Backbase and all that stuff, and how you later realize that there's some things we didn't get right and we need to go back and reinvest. And that's usually in the innovation journey, that's another crucible moment, because like you're facing your first kind of major roadblocks, your first failures, if you will.
Yeah.
And remember we spoke about like the earlier guys who are like culturally averse. What tends to happen is that they use these moments to kind of say, we shouldn't have done this thing in the first place. I told you guys, right?
Yep.
And that now needs a new set of leadership to say, we've committed to this path, we must go ahead, right? Can you just walk us through some of the discussions that were happening at this period when some of these, wheels, if you will, start falling apart and getting this kind of negative feedback from the market?
So you're right. Obviously, there were very interesting conversations at that time when we're trying to understand what's gone wrong and what's the way forward. But I think the main points are really, it's a question of fail fast and learn.
Yeah.
So we knew what the pain points were. We had a clear action plan of how we we're going to go about fixing it. And really, it wasn't the time to give up. There was a big investments at stake. And at the same time, we had clarity of what we knew, what was the root cause and what we needed to do to fix it.
Precisely.
So with that, it gave us the confidence to say, look, every journey has its ups and downs, but we'll be able to basically address that. And we quickly pivoted, had the teams focus on some of these areas that needed fixing.
Yeah.
And it's really quick and early wins. We and get that reinforcement. We made some changes, went to customers and got their feedback of whether we're in the right direction, etc.
Yeah.
And we did get that reinforcement that things were improving. Even just simple thing, if you go to the Google comments and you'll see the kind of review feedback that you get, and we're like, yes, we are now getting into the right direction.
Exactly.
So it was very interesting discussions, but I think we were very clear that it's not a 1 month project. It's the future of I&M. So we need to just make sure that we put in all the efforts we needed to move in that direction.
No, you've made a critical point, and this is what this podcast is all about. Speak the business lessons that I learned in the journey of doing fintech. And one thing I wanted to ask is, there's multiple elements of this journey. One of them is that in that transition, you have you have this kind of core corporate bank that is major, right? I saw some numbers that now the retail and business banking is kind of like doing more than the corporate bank. But it's critical to the entire business. And I remember a statistic that you're doing like over a third of the LCs being issued in the country, the letters of credit, I&M does them. What tends to happen in this kind of digitization journeys is that the bandwidth of the core leadership gets very caught up in the technology decisions, the metrics of retail and SME banking, and sometimes the bandwidth is limited to deal with the traditional corporate clients. And some of these guys, big businessmen, a bit of ego, they're like, I want Shamir in my office, but your time is spread thin. How have you guys managed that kind of like keeping your core customers happy as you spend increasing amount of time on this new digital thing?
Yeah, thank you. If our Imara, our first pillar is actually is about keeping our core strength, and growing it.
Yeah.
So even as we were designing the strategy, we were clear that this segment that we've been dealing with historically is not going anywhere. We just need to make sure we have the right focus and energy on that.
Yeah.
So what I'd say is we, I wouldn't say consciously, but it just kind of happened that there was a set of team leadership that really their strengths were that particular area.
Yeah.
So they've spent most of their time focusing to make sure that we don't lose our core competencies in that area.
Yeah.
And whilst there was the other side of the leadership, which was spending most of its time in trying to build this the new business within I&M. So we split this accordingly.
Yeah.
And I think COVID also really helped.
COVID was a blessing in disguise.
It's
for digital.
It really made everyone realize the importance of having, that digital engagement with customers.
Yeah.
And it opened up, this even those who may have had fears, I think, realized that, this is something we don't really...
You don't have a choice.
Yeah. It has to be done.
Yeah.
And I think that really did help us in that journey.
Yeah.
So look, today, we're getting every month we're getting 10x new customers onboarded.
10x.
Yeah.
So for instance, like if just walk me through what 10x means. Like, it's like you open 4,000 customers this week. The next month is 40,000.
No, we used to open 2,000 new customers a month.
Yeah.
Now we're getting 20.
That's a lot.
Right, a month.
So
and it's growing.
That's like on right now it's around at least last time I checked it was around 450,000 customers. So that's like growing 50% each year.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's really scaling.
Yeah.
The good thing is when we look at our we not net promoter score, it's still above 70, 74.
Yeah.
So what we've tried to make sure is that to your point of that core business that we used to have in the past and still do, try and maintain that customer experience and the personal touch where it matters. So that's really been a core part of our journey, that we don't want this to dilute what we've built over the years. We celebrated 50 years last year, and we've grown with some of these businesses, and that focus needs to remain even as we're trying to build a bigger new business.
And one thing, your LinkedIn is just full of you in I&M t-shirts opening branches. Like you're spending a lot of time opening branches. And, there's this kind of like digital strategy. But if anything, from an outsider looking in, it seems to have kind of activated a branch opening strategy.
Yeah.
That probably wasn't there when you were starting this digital thing. What's the insight there? Why are you opening branches like crazy? And you have a digital thing going on?
So we are definitely opening branches across the country. Look, in the historically, we were focused on a particular segment where, the physical network wasn't really necessary.
Yeah.
Now that we're a lot more into the retail space, and by the way, now, the investments we've done even on the marketing front, even, just the kind of medias that we use.
Yeah.
Just to give you a sense, our top of mind score used to be 2%. So for every 100 people, the first bank they think about is I&M would be 2. And now not even within a year, it's at 33%.
Well, that's huge.
Yeah. So it's a big,
So a third of people think of
I&M as a first bank, right?
Yeah.
So
and this is across the entire, or is it, Nairobi or?
No, across the country.
Okay.
So with this kind of efforts, we needed to also understand what does it take for these consumers to open a bank account. You can onboard on our OTG app, download the app, and you can onboard digitally. But what we realized is that the market is still heavily, especially at the, if I look at the sole proprietors and the smaller businesses, it's still heavily cash. It's still a cash economy. And also I think it's not helped, historically in Kenya, we've had banks that have collapsed, etc. So that mindset of, I need to see a physical location where my money is.
Yeah.
So what we've seen is as we're opening these branches in certain regions, we're seeing an uptick, massive scale in onboarding digitally. So these customers have never visited the branch, but because they know there's a branch here, they're willing to basically engage with I&M, open an account and get their services. So the way we see it is that the branch expansion is really an enabler, and they work hand in hand with it on the digital space. Our branches, designs, etc., have also been factored this into account. And the whole idea of these branches is really to provide more a place for higher engagement. Less about transactional. You can get your transactions done online, but really a space for where you need richer conversations. You know where we are.
Exactly.
That's the idea.
And I think what I'm saying is that you have like high NPS even on the digital side. And then now you open a location, and the first thing people experience is a good digital experience. And therefore, there's kind of like a local word of mouth that goes around. And that local word of mouth is leading to this now higher, what you call top of mind score, but it's also leading to the numbers that you're seeing in terms of 20,000, accounts. And, is it that, because with those kind of things going on, is it that now you have to maximize based on factors such as, cash density, population density of business? And if you get that thing right, then you just now start seeing the numbers now really scaling.
Yeah, it is. I mean, obviously, even where we're opening branches, it's a lot. There's a lot of research goes into the population growth, the GDP per capita, and in these counties, etc. And that's really what's being used to inform where we need to go. But I think a lot of the efforts in there is in terms of making sure that we're going to places where we know we have a proposition that makes sense for that end consumer. So, I think one of the big changes for us was, during COVID, the central bank had stopped charging, or told all banks not to charge for bank to MPesa and Airtel Money, right? And then after COVID, they allowed banks to reintroduce, and everyone introduced those charges. So we took that bold decision at that time not to charge this, and what we call Nisare Kabisa, right? And that's really, I think, has resonated very well with the everyday Kenyan. And yes, maybe for some it may look like it's a small amount, but it adds up when you look at the numbers.
I don't know. There's something about like transaction charges. My wife and I bank with I&M, and that thing of like free transfers to MPesa, it's important. Like whether even looking at how these transaction charges add up, it just feels like this is the right thing to do. Why am I being charged to move money, from one pocket to another.
Yeah.
And so, and I think that's, if you're to break down that NPS and say X% is coming from this, X% is coming from this, I think a good chunk would be coming from that.
Yeah.
Sorry, Kabisa.
Yeah.
And one of the things you brought up was this whole idea of lifestyle banking. And it's a thing that people, you know, a number of bankers are talking about. Everyone is saying like, we need to move away from just transactional enablement into lifestyle banking. But like I think we, as an industry, we are just at the foothills in terms of what can actually get done. You know, I'll give you an example. And you know, this is like, as a customer of yours, as a customer of other banks, you know, like I have like, you know, car insurance that's been renewed at the beginning of every year, but the bank doesn't know that I have car insurance.
Yeah.
And my car insurance is being brought like from a sister company. And so you can see there's a data and like customer journey gap, right? So like one part of the organization is not speaking to another part of the organization. And there's this lack of holistic data about who I am, you know, what my preferences are, you know, what I'm spending my card on, and then now providing offers that, you know, actually you can get this cheaper through this kind of partner, right? Like, what's causing such a massive gap? And the reason why I'm asking that specific question is like, you guys are smart guys. Like, you know, it's not that you don't know that issue exists, right? You do know that issue exists. But what causes that gap between reality and expectations?
I think banks are seriously poor at using their data, and they have so much rich data. Right. Yeah. Even when you said you're paying for that insurance, you're probably paying it from the bank.
Yeah.
So I don't really need even the underwriter involved to really understand what you're doing with your money.
Precisely.
Right. And it's really about just using this data better. It's a journey. I think as part of this whole lifestyle app that we're trying to build, a lot of it is determined in terms of using this data to inform, also prioritizing what we want to do on it is through this. So we've actually now got a dedicated, focused analytics squad, and their job is really just to come up with all these insights on our customers, so we really understand what it is we should focus on and create features which go beyond transactional.
Yeah.
Right now, a lot of our efforts have been obviously get the basics, which is get the transactional elements that a customer would need, build some sales capability, and then now let's layer on some of the more lifestyle solutions. So the whole idea is that you spend more of your time in this app as opposed to in others. And I think the Ant Group have done. I mean, if you look at it, what they've done, literally, you can live your whole life just through that.
Exactly. And I think, banks have if I look at just my own personal experiences, that you have that core trust, right? And what that core trust does is that even if you introduce a new product, I'm more likely to trust you because I know my bank is not going to mess me up. Like, they're not going to steal from me, right? If there's reconciliation issues, that's not going to happen. And I think my view is that, banks have got such a massive role to play in not only digital transformation internally, but even for the society.
Yeah.
And if you look at, for instance, you guys and your branch expansion and everything, one thing I keep asking myself is that banks are looking at SMEs, right? But I haven't seen a bank with a single product where we help you incorporate your business, right? Stripe does this, and Stripe is a global payments company. Yeah. And with Stripe, you can go in, incorporate, they set everything up for you. And now once everything is set up, all the payments, everything is done like that, right? So if you look at a bank, for instance, like you guys, I think the median age in Kenya is like 2021, right? And people are not getting jobs. Guys are going solopreneurship.
Yeah.
And there's a gap for can we just help you in entire journey as an entrepreneur, not just as a customer of the bank, but just as an entrepreneur. Like, how do you see that going?
No, I think you're right. It's a journey we're looking at. We want to basically make it easy for a sole proprietor to basically start his business, open an account digitally. But there are some enablers that are required. Digital records. How do we verify that the company is incorporated? How do we verify? So we need this digital. If you talk about CR12, the old companies are not even yet on digitally. So there are some challenges that need to be addressed. But the whole idea is that beyond individuals, how could we also expand this to small businesses? So one of the things we did was obviously extended Nisari Kabisa for the small sole proprietors, etc. But the whole idea behind this was we wanted to get these customers in. We've set up even MSME clinics that we're going around with. We've integrated with certain basically ERPs, small ERPs. So like we've got ready adapters for them, so that to help these kind of businesses. And the next stage is really how do we try and onboard them digitally, whilst obviously taking care of some of the challenges that we face in terms of digital records versus non-digital. But it is definitely part of our plans,
and it's
going forward.
It's very clear that when we speak, and I think maybe this is how the bank looks at this or needs to look at this, is that first push, 2018 to let's say 2024, was around transaction enablement, and there needs to be an even bigger push now for now this kind of digital lifestyle enablement. And almost saying that, okay, guys, we've done this thing well, but we're at the foothills of this other thing. And we need to prepare ourselves for this journey to execute. Agreed.
And this is where also there'll be a lot more involvement with partners. And then the whole idea is, can we partner with the right kind of fintechs out there, and so that we can basically offer some of these, so we can be the bank offering core products, and then how do we partner with some of these providers to provide solutions for these customers in one place.
That's definitely, and I think what I'm taking from this is that there's a lot of discussion about banks are not doing fintech right, banks are not doing digital right, but what's coming through is that there's a lot that goes into it. Right, we can't do the same things as like a fintech, and we're already going there. And in the way they say in Kenya is pole pole ndio mwendo. It's like slowly is the best way to do this. So I think we'll take a break there, and then now we'll switch to the last bit. The last bit is simply the ecosystems play, and the AI thing. Thinking about launching a spin-off digital bank, but don't want to spend years building from scratch? Meet Skalit, the end-to-end digital banking solution that helps you move fast and scale effortlessly. With Skalit, you get a cloud-native, API-fast solution that's modular, secure, and ready to evolve with you. No legacy constraints, no bottlenecks, just seamless innovation to power your growth. Whether you're a fintech expanding into banking, a marketplace embedding financial services, or a traditional bank launching a digital brand, Skalit gives you the flexibility to build, launch, and scale fast. Forget complexity, focus on your customers, and let Skalit handle the rest. Ready to launch? Visit skalit.com today. So you mentioned something around partners and ecosystems, and I think one of the things I've seen in a lot of your literature, your reports, is that you want to be the market leader in ecosystems. Now, usually ecosystems traditionally, there's your traditional ecosystems, corporate supply chains, value chains, and all that stuff. But one thing that's coming up is now digital ecosystems, where you provide your services as a platform, you rely on some digital capabilities. One thing I've noticed in the industry is that as some of these ecosystems seem to be, I wouldn't, haphazard is not the right word, but there's lack of like extreme clarity. It's almost as if it's like, let's meet these fintechs and see what they're doing, and then let's see what works and what doesn't work, right? And that has led to a situation where it's like, the steam is coming out, the wheels are falling off this train, right? How do you now transition into now a really well thought out digital ecosystem strategy?
So one of our core pillars within Imara itself is we want to basically impact 10 million lives. And the way we see it is obviously there's the what we're doing with our customers as we're onboarding them. But how can we really offer, banking as a service to different digital ecosystems, and rather than trying to compete with them, but basically become an enabler for them to really touch the whichever kind of use case they're particularly going into. And we have a framework in mind, which we even as we meet some of these different fintechs, we look into what are they trying to basically solve? What problem are they solving? Does it align to what we're trying to do under Imara? And if it does, then what kind of impact is it likely to realize in terms of lives? And if it ticks the boxes, then that's what we do. Then then we'll invest our time. And we have a dedicated team that's really focuses really trying to see what we can do with several of these ecosystems. And I think it's early days, but we've seen some good progress. And in fact, as of 2024, for the last year, we basically indirectly impacted 4.5 million lives through this.
So you're halfway there.
So
and at a
that
good
number
time
will obviously grow as once we reach
especially as you're growing your reach. And usually with ecosystems, like especially digital, like there's usually like a passive banking as a service kind of, and by passive it means like we're just offering you infrastructure, and onboarding is largely kind of procedural KYC type of thing. Just make sure that you're not onboarding guys who are processing, anti-terrorist transactions, all that kind of stuff. And then there's a active one where we're saying, like, for instance, with the lifestyle banking thing. And you say that, for instance, like SME onboarding as an example, or digital insurance as an example, or shopping as an example. And you actually have to go out and say, who are the right type of partners for this? Like, we need a partner to do this specific job, because the way we look at this transaction flow or this customer flow, this is not something that we want to do. We need a partner for this, right? Where, in terms of the active passive, divide, if you could call it that, where have you in the past spent most of your energy on?
So we've in our framework, we're very clear that, what are our key focus areas. And then for that, this dedicated team spends a good part of their time trying to understand in the market what's best fits for that purpose, so that we can proactively engage them. Because the reality is, in terms of fintechs, at early stage knocking on our door, it's like it's a constant thing. They do come, but at the end of the day, we need to remain focused on what really we want to basically draw in the long run. So a lot of the time, I'd say about 70% of the time from that team is really to see, these are the key areas. Can we really just focus on those and get those right, rather than trying to and do everything and on the pretense of saying, okay, it's an ecosystem, so let's just connect to this ecosystem. So our focus is really 10 million lives. Does it tick that box? Is it complementary service that to what I&M is doing? Can we add value to that partnership.
Yeah.
If it ticks those boxes, obviously there's the regulatory aspects.
Got it.
So that to me is one of the areas where I think as a country we're still got quite a bit of we need to make a lot more strides in that space.
Yeah.
If I compare it to some other markets.
Yeah.
But if we do, then I think we will really be able to. It won't be 10 million. I think it can be even 100 million.
Yeah, man. When I had the 10 million figure, and I was like, you guys are already at 500K, more than 500K customers, and the rate at which you're growing at, I mean, I think 10 million you'll hit it very soon and even scale, especially because you're now in the region. How many countries are you guys in?
So we're in obviously Kenya, Rwanda, Uganda, Tanzania, and in Mauritius.
In Mauritius, so that's 5 countries, and I'm sure there are plans.
Yeah, there are plans
to expand.
Yeah.
Now, the thing that is the talk of the town, everyone is talking about it, everyone is using it. It's AI. Initially, when it came out, you could kind of ignore it and say, we want to look at how this thing is going and whatever. But I'm sure you use AI personally on a day-to-day basis. I think everyone, all our subscribers, I mean, almost it's the fastest growing technology ever. And the rate at which not only it's growing, but it's improving, it's impossible to ignore. Specifically, when you look at some of the use cases that now for banking specifically, because when you talk about the lifestyle thing, when you talk about UX, I think, AI is definitely something you can't ignore. Before now going into what are you guys doing? The most important thing is what are some of the conversations that are being had at an exco level about AI? Is it let's go for it, or what are the conversations going on?
I think that we sometimes overcomplicate and make it sound like a very complicated technology.
Yeah.
The reality is, you're right. How did I come to this location? It's basically using AI, right?
Yeah.
It may sound simple, but in this day and age, but the reality is that's what's brought me here.
Yeah.
From the other location.
Yeah.
It's AI is critical for and I think for any organization, it is the future. And it is also the now. And it's definitely something we're having a lot of engagement on. We're in the midst of actually working on our AI strategy, our medium-term plans for this. But even as we're doing that, it's not like we're not doing anything on this space.
Yeah.
So, the what I'd say is the quick win kind of use cases has been really about credit scoring, and we've already implemented some of this to offer us, a digital short-term loans, etc. on our app, and it's using some of these algorithms.
Yeah.
But the whole idea is there's so many use cases there when it comes to risk management, fraud, just bringing efficiencies within the organization.
Yeah.
And to your point, can we use them to really predict the behavior of customers and offer the next product to buy, etc. to the customers to give them that that seamless experience.
Yeah.
So a lot of work is going into this. There's a dedicated work stream actually currently in place, who's looking into what kind of use cases we need to prioritize based on at the end of the day, all this costs money. So we need to look at what should we prioritize, what are the quick wins that we can adopt and really start implementing some of this. So at the moment, what I'd say, a lot of our AI efforts has been really on the credit scoring elements, but I think it's much wider, so much wider.
Like just like adding voice to the app and being able to ask things like what's my balance, being able to say, if my AI tells me like, hey Sam, you're running out of cash and you've got a payment coming up soon, do you want to move money from your savings to your whatever? And that really drives, I think, the core platform you've built and some of those decisions you made in 2018, 2019, and some of that investments, now is when now it can really play an advantage, because if you hadn't done them, the AI discussion would have been much more difficult.
Yeah, true.
It would have been much more
Yeah.
difficult, because now you'd be back to monolithic
Yeah.
systems and all that kind of stuff.
And one of the interesting things about Backbase, I don't know whether you know, but they have a marketplace.
Yeah.
And if you go in there, they've already integrated with many of these providers of whether it's AI, whether it's your KYC onboarding, etc. And that makes also the journey of your integration and delivery a lot quicker.
Yeah.
So I think that's also one of the things that at the time when we were looking at who to go for, that really did sell its part. And I think that will help us going forward as well.
Yeah, and having a partner who's innovating as fast as you want them to be, it's critical. I remember speaking to Kamal of Little Cub, and one of the things he said is that they used to build a lot of machine learning algorithms to do credit scoring, but they're not getting the results they wanted. And when they switched to this kind of now deep learning AI, the results were just phenomenal, much higher. And for instance, when you're experimenting, is it that do you put a small data set on your ChatGPT and then look at the results it gives you? How does that, how do those initial experiments at credit scoring work on a day-to-day basis?
So obviously we've kind of built our own little database within the
Got it.
within the squad that really looks at this data in a controlled manner.
Yeah.
Obviously, we can't put things on ChatGPT,
etc.
We need to put in place the governance around it.
Yeah.
That's critical. It might sound like the more boring stuff, but the reality is if we don't have these foundations, right, we are a bank at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So those elements are very critical. Putting in place the policies on what is ethical and what isn't when it comes to this space. So those are some of the areas that we're spending a lot of our time on. And obviously, what I'd say is the quick win was obviously credit scoring. But what we're very clear is that's just the beginning.
Yeah.
That's what we can do for now.
Yeah.
And deliver it very quickly. But there's a heavy investment that we're looking into in terms of what else can we do in a lot of the use cases. And we have the use cases ready. We're just now looking at what partners we need to work with to help us scale.
And that's a big one. Because everyone, just like you work with Backbase, everyone will need kind of an AI infrastructure partner, whether it's OpenAI or Microsoft or whatever, but someone who gives you the capabilities to deploy your own internal LLMs and all that kind of stuff. And I think it's one of those vendor decisions that needs to happen very quickly, because finance is one of those areas with the biggest surface area, if you think about it. If you think of engagement at the branch level, how you've built engagement, right? That's the one thing now people are coming to the branch to do. But if you had, a very comprehensive AI and, even going to the level of local language, chat capabilities and voice capabilities, and you're laying this on top of your branch network, I think, the customer experience just now goes, to an extremely other level. Even if you go to Turkana and someone is able to say, I'm trying to open a business, what should I do? I'm trying to get a loan, what are the interest rates and all this kind of stuff? How quickly will I repay? That just opens this whole new kind of phase of finance. We had the MPesa phase, which now everyone has now kind of done that digital enablement. But this AI phase just offers so much opportunity.
It does. I remember, this was, I don't know how many years ago, but in Singapore, seeing a branch there where as you walk in as a customer, it obviously can identify you, the usual stuff.
Yeah.
But also it could predict your mood. So the customer experienced person, knows your understands who you are, knows your name, etc., the basics, but also understands what the high probability of what your mood is like. And that helps him or her converse accordingly, depending on what your mood is like. And it was very interesting to see, how that has really upped their net promoter score, because the customers felt a lot more human engagement with the customer reps, and just simply by basically having this camera there, which was telling, predicting.
And it's not difficult, just the thought of it. And you talk about a net promoter score, and it's becoming such a critical part, because if everyone can, if you can do a digital transaction everywhere, then the core thing is like, what's my customer experience with this thing? Because now transactions are table stakes, everyone can do them. And so that becomes a critical thing. One of the things I wanted to ask you about in this journey, this digital transformation journey, people often come across counterintuitive information, right? Like whether it's the branch, whether it's whatever. It's that I thought this thing would be like this, but now it's actually like this. What's the most counterintuitive thing you've seen from either customer behavior, all those kind of things in this digital journey?
There's so many, I think, but it's I don't know how much of it is. It's when you're adopting and releasing this technology, I think one of the key areas is really trying to create that awareness across the market. And at the same time, you learn new things as you move forward. For instance, right now with our onboarding, one thing we're seeing, and I think it's a banking industry issue, is that like the new form of ID cards, for instance, the Huduma one, the green line across it, when you're taking a picture, it's very prominent, which is not great, obviously. When you're trying to do your checks, etc. But who would have imagined this, right?
That would be an issue.
But here we are with that, and obviously that's a lot of the IDs are coming out from that. So these are we're now having to go back and work with the service providers of how can we improve on enhance the technology to face this, and it's specific to Kenya. Really. But what does that mean? It means some like, oh, we were expecting this to do everything, but it's not doing. So let's go back to manual ways of working, right?
I mean, and that's that's crazy. Like, think of just the way an ID is done, and it has to now affect all these kind of workflows. Maybe it's an opportunity for a Kenyan company to come and actually solve that problem.
It is. It's a pain point.
and that's where the fintech ecosystem engagement comes in, where you can sit down with these guys and say, this is a very unique problem we're having, and if you can solve it, then this is a partnership, that opportunity that comes in. And then so Shameer, this we are winding up now, and it's been an incredible conversation. You've been an exec. You started as a management trainee, and you've gone all the way to be an executive GM. You've been very core to this entire digital transformation. You potentially never saw your career when you started off as a digital transformation expert, but here we are. You received a lot of advice in the past, right? But there's probably some pieces of advice that stick, and especially because they came from the most unexpected source. Like, what's the one piece of advice that sticks with you that came from the most unexpected source?
So I wouldn't say it's unexpected, but there's one thing that's always stuck in my mind. It's like that time when we were doing the research, I'd gone to the Netherlands and got the opportunity to meet the CEO of ING at that time at some forum. And one of the things they did was, they were new in that organization at that time, and they were trying to go through this whole transformation and ING. And what the person did was, in a town hall, called up the one of the project teams that had failed in one of the projects, called them up, and everyone there thought, "Oh God, oh my!"
Not in front of everyone.
Yeah, not in front of everyone. And actually, they celebrated them. And the reason they celebrated them was because the project was failing. They called it out quickly, and they learned from it. They didn't continue with the project, but they called it out quickly.
Yeah, the project team itself called it out.
Yeah, and the fact that this team was celebrated in front of a town hall by the CEO, just changed the mindsets of everyone out there. That look, it's okay to fail, but fail fast and learn,
and be honest.
Be honest. And that triggered, that massive change in that. ING is not a small organization, but that was one of the key elements that really triggered a complete shift in their culture.
Yeah.
And what I'd say is, if an organization as big as that can change, then
everyone can change.
Anyone can change. Everyone can change. But the leader sets the tone.
Yeah. And it's one of those things, like, people think management is this big complex things, but it's so small
exactly
things at the right time that do so much for the entire organization. Yeah. And listen, Shameer, this conversation has gone way better than I expected. and thanks for joining us. It's been great. I think kudos to what you guys are doing. We are tied at the hip because if you succeed, then my banking gets better. So I'm really wishing that you guys succeed. And so thanks. I mean, we've come to the end of the episode. Thanks for staying out through the whole course of the episode and being a subscriber to Frontier FinTech. Kindly subscribe to the podcast, subscribe to the newsletter, and let's grow the community. Thank you. Thinking about launching a spin-off digital bank, but don't want to spend years building from scratch? Meet Scalit, the end-to-end digital banking solution that helps you move fast and scale effortlessly. With Scalit, you get a cloud-native, API-fast solution that's modular, secure, and ready to evolve with you. No legacy constraints, no bottlenecks, just seamless innovation to power your growth. Whether you're a fintech expanding into banking, a marketplace embedding financial services, or a traditional bank launching a digital brand, Scalit gives you the flexibility to build, launch, and scale fast. Forget complexity, focus on your customers, and let Scalit handle the rest. Ready to launch? Visit scalit.com today.